Hey everyone, my name is Anita Ihuman, and today I'll be talking about quality onboarding, a ticket to a healthy open source experience. Well, I'm sure we all must have gone through the beginner phase where we had to ask questions and reach out to maintainers or project leaders to help us navigate an open source community. And we're going to be talking about how that has affected your experience as either a user or a contributor and as a community as well. Before we get into the topic, a little bit about me. I am Anita Ihuman. I'm a technical writer at Apache APISIX, an open source API gateway under the Apache Foundation. I'm also a developer advocate. I was previously developer advocate at Kivano. I'm an open source fangirl. This is because my entire career has been built around open source advocacy and contribution. And I also love cats. So during this section, we're going to be talking about what is onboarding in open source and how does this affect us. We're going to be talking about the different or the common onboarding mistakes that have been made by most open source communities and how these onboarding mistakes affected or the consequences it has on contributors. And we're going to be looking at how we can improve these onboarding practices and the reward for quality onboarding for a community and an individual. Well, let's get into it. First and foremost, what is onboarding? And this is simply the process of properly welcoming people or welcoming people with the right resources and information they need about the project. And the definition here says onboarding is the process of formally introducing and integrating new or recruited members of a community through the basic knowledge that they're required to excel in that particular community. The basic knowledge, the basic skills, the basic behaviors, the information necessary to excel in that particular community or project. Now, for most open source communities, this experience is not usually, the best, or most open source contributors not experience the best of this onboarding process. Now, a lot of times communities will put up an onboarding process that is either dormant or irrelevant, because it's irrelevant in the sense that you're coming here but you're not receiving a lot of information, or it doesn't actually make any impact regarding my learning curve in that particular community and all of that, or there's actually non-existent for most communities. And well, how does this affect us? In several ways. For a community, you will see abandoned tags for that particular community. You see persons creating issues that they're not fixing, or taking up issues that they end up not fixing. And you see a lot of documentations that are left halfway because the contributor got exhausted at some point where it was too technical and the person couldn't contribute. And we have the reluctancy to contribute or collaborate from members. And this is common because when contributors do not feel the energy or the help, the welcome from the community, they're not going to want to interact with other persons in the community because of that fright. Now, during this or throughout this topic, I'd like you to picture, open source as getting into high school or a university now for the first time. Let's say you just finished your secondary school and you want to get into the university as a student. Now, the same experience or the same feeling that you get is going to be overwhelming, obviously. And the same feeling that you get is the same you get when you get into open source. Now, not being properly welcomed by either someone to, give you a tour around the school or someone to give you a guide on the do's and don'ts of that particular school. You're going to experience one or two bad stops along the way. And that's the same experience I want you to picture when you're thinking of open source communities and onboarding. All right, so you're going to see reduced productivity from these contributors because they didn't receive the necessary information. They're going to spend most of the time trying to research this information on their own, and so they're not going to be so productive, and no commitment because they don't see any need to attach so much to the community or to the project that they're contributing to. And for individuals, you will see that they're going to be withdrawing from this particular project. As a contributor, you must have felt the need to leave a community, either because of one issue or another, and at the end of the day, you end up leaving. And I'm going to use myself for instance. Some of the early open source communities that I attempted contributing to during my early days of trying to get into open source, I ended up not contributing to these communities because I didn't get the necessary information, or I wasn't given the necessary information that I needed at the time. And for someone who was new to tech and then new to open source, it was hard to find some of this information or know some of these things on my own. And I ended up abandoning the projects or the tasks that were assigned to me then. And of course, you see the resentment towards the community from the contributors. And this is because they feel like they don't feel the positive energy, don't feel the welcome, the happiness from the community to have them. So you're going to see the outbursts in either the way they react, the way they act, talk to people, the way they relate and collaborate with other persons in not the most friendly ways, of course. Then you see a lot of persons experiencing burnout, and because you're trying to adapt to things that you're not used to, it's going to be exhausting. Definitely, most persons get burnout at the end of the day and are not able to even deliver any form of useful resources or useful information at the end of the day. And you see nonchalant attitude towards work from the contributors, of course, because they're like, it's just open source. Most of us don't even know what we're doing. And I think it's like that for everyone. Yes, these phrases are always repeated amongst most contributors because they didn't get the proper information that they need to do excellently in that particular community. And you see no dedication from these contributors, of course, because they don't feel any need to be committed to your community. They don't see the need to, waste so much time and effort trying to build your community. So they will leave at any instance or any slight chance that comes their way. Now you see that this affects several communities. This can affect you as an individual, mentally and both career-wise, but then you see how this affects the community more. What are the common onboarding mistakes that have been made by open source communities? Well, there are quite a number of those. We're going to be looking at just a few. First is assumption, assuming that everything is the way you think it is. Now, the diversity in open source is enough to make you realize that everyone is coming with a different perspective. Everyone is coming with a different background. And so the assumption that is not going to work for everyone. Assuming the contributors can read the documentation and figure their ways out is a wrong way to think of things. Assuming the contributors can actually assimilate this technical content, this very technical content you're giving out to them in the process of onboarding, is a very wrong way to think. Assuming these contributors will be able to get a grasp of all of the multiple information you've handed over to them in a space of 30 minutes is a wrong way to think. And this assumption affects a lot of communities because they're like, just send the documentation, they figure it out. And contributors end up not figuring it out because most contributors are lazy to read our documentations, of course. So instead of reading the documentation that you just handed out, they'd rather just stay a few weeks and act like they're in the community, and then the next thing is they bail on the project. And then another common mistake is generalizing that what works for contributor A is going to work for contributor B. Most contributors need hands-on guide on getting around the community. And so if your onboarding practice does not actually take into recognition the differences among your contributors, if this works for contributors from the East, then it's most likely not for contributors from the West. Understanding the differences amongst your contributors is a great way to actually address this, but this is a common mistake that is always made in open source communities. Another is negligence. You see communities neglecting their newcomers and the contributors. Most times they put effort into getting them onboarded, give them the documentation and reach out to them once in a while. But other times there's no effort put towards it. So you just get into a community and you see everyone having, active conversations that you have zero or no idea about, and it's that experience is really overwhelming because you're receiving so much information at the same time that you're not certain about. But most contributors at this phase are not even given the recognition that they need. They're just left to engage with every single person that has been discussing technicalities in the group, that if there's any. And then you see too many unnecessary details. Most onboarding practices are really weird. You see someone handing you like 3, 4, 5 documentations. Read these documentations, you understand our project. Why not save both of us that struggle and give me a summary of the entire documentation, the most detailed and concise summary of that particular documentation? We save all of this trouble. And of course, incomprehensive documentation. I mentioned this earlier. Most documentations are structured in a way that they don't put into consideration contributors or users that are very new to the product. And so you see a contributor who wants to actually dedicate their time contributing to a project, having to read Google the terms on a documentation while reading alongside. And as much as you'll see there's no problem in that, most contributors find that really exhausting. And at the end of the day, you're not going to have this contributor come back and then read through the same text that's going on in the chat with so much technical terms, Googling alongside. That is going to be exhausting for any person at all. And then you see, most of the documentation do not even have like guidelines for newcomers in that particular community, or did not even have basic getting started guidelines, to help you understand the project. So you have to do a lot of researching and finding amongst the numerous contents that exist in the documents, but not for newcomers, of course. And then we have unclear learning curves. And most communities do not actually have an onboarding process. They do not even have an onboarding practice. They do not have anything related to onboarding. Contributors just get in and begin their journey towards the community, and which is a really poor way to actually look at things. Because now, if you're still looking at open source like the university, like I mentioned earlier, you're going to see that if you get into a university, you're not just going to walk into any random class and have a seat on any random seat. You actually need someone to walk you to the class you're meant to be in, and probably a seat that was assigned to you. And that's exactly how it works in open source. With an unclear learning curve, contributors will most likely make so many contributions that are either irrelevant to the project, or for them, contributors will definitely see the need for that particular thing. But at the end, you see that contribution might not be what the project needed at the time. And so putting out a clear learning curve is a thing most communities currently lack when it comes to onboarding. So what are the consequences of poor onboarding? Of course, and like I mentioned earlier, these practices exist in most open source community, and most of these mistakes have been made. And what are the consequences? There are quite a number of those, because when contributors or users do not get the necessary information needed to get along with that particular project, the entire community is going to suffer for it, or the entire project is going to suffer for it. Take, for instance, I walk into a community and the definition that I'm giving for that particular community and the purpose of the community is not 100% correct. And I end up sharing that information that is not 100% correct to the next 100 persons that are coming into the community, the same way I was giving that particular information. Not only does that affect the entire line of new contributors coming in, but I'm going to be misinforming every single person based on the information that I received during an orientation. So whatever activities or whatever onboarding that you give to your contributors on the first day, it's what is going to impact your community in either a few days, a few months, or a few years, whichever one it is. Now, some of the consequences you see when people are not properly onboarded, you see that there's no trust for that community from community members or from contributors. Contributors not feel like the community is a safe place for them to, exert their skills and potentials. So they will most likely shy away from all of the tasks and responsibilities that are available because they did not feel the need to actually contribute. They not feel accepted by that community. And of course, you have the lower employee morale. I heard someone ask sometime, and the question was, what happens when a contributor gets into the community and defaults a code of conduct? Now, the only reason why someone defaults a code of conduct is either out of ignorance or they intentionally want to do it. Now, when a community member is not giving the right information, let's say the code of conduct, for instance, that is a document that a contributor needs to have be handed over the first day of getting to the community. I mean, be able to look at the documentation and find out the code of conduct, right? But when when new contributors do not receive this, they have higher chances of defaulting the code of conduct or going against the moral of that particular community or that particular group. And we're going to see that a slow level of engagement in that particular community because a lot of persons do not feel confident enough to air their opinions or drop in suggestions towards any ways of improving things. Now, this is because they didn't receive the right information, and so the confidence level for them is not as high as other persons engaging. And so you see the contributors that are getting into your communities do not make so much engagement. I know some communities that I've gotten into, you see over 2,000 members or 5,000 members, and then the last message in that Slack was 1 month ago or 2 weeks ago. And you'll be wondering why, because this is an active project, it solves the problem. The GitHub repositories are actually active. So why does the community not do the same thing? That's because people have been tamed to not come here with their problems. People have been tamed to not come here looking for answers or come here answering, fixing problems for other persons. And that's how the community has been structured. Now, we also have the reduced confidence among contributors. Like I said, when the contributor does not get the right information, the urge to want to bring up the innovative ideas and suggestions during community meetings and even during the chat is usually very, very hard because you most likely not see why your opinion would matter in this situation. Because getting to the community, no one really noticed that, oh, we had a new member, or nobody even recognized that. Yeah, you're there. At the end of the day, or even during the meetings, no one recognized that you joined the meetings. Now, if you want to make any contributions, you'd be like, no one really knows I'm here, so I might just stay, quiet. For most contributors, it's like that. I know I would do something like that personally, and I think the results go the same for most contributors. And of course, this will result in poor performance for your project because you're going to be losing out on potential contributors that could have become possible maintainers or even a staff in your open source community, simply because they didn't get the right information that was needed to excel in your community. And you're going to have reduced productivity because a lot of persons are going to be leaving the community. The community is going to be losing lots of contributors. At the end of the day, you're going to be having people not confident in the community to make enough impact, not confident enough in the community to actually do outreach for your community. And at the end of the day, this reduces productivity for your open source projects. And you're going to have inability to retain these contributors. Like I said, once people do not get the satisfaction or the people do not feel like your community is a safe place for them to, explore and, show off their potentials, they're going to look for another community to do this in. So at the end of the day, your community is unable to retain these, And this, of course, is going to affect the project or the community sustainability. Because when you're not able to like keep your contributors coming in, at the end of the day, you most likely not have contributors, because everyone is going to work out of the community because of the reasons, me being that they're not properly onboarded. And in the end, this will yield, of course, an unhealthy community. And because your community does not have the diverse perspective that's expected in every open source communities, community members do not feel welcomed, so there's no collaboration. And all of this will bring up the different negativities that an open source community is not expected to have. Of course, with the poor communication from community members due to their confidence level and all, you're going to have an unhealthy open source community, and that is not what we are looking out for. And so how can we actually fix all of this as a community, as an open source community, or open source enthusiasts or open source contributors generally? As owners of a community, or as project leaders or community leaders, you should first of all evaluate the existing rules and guides. Now, what does your existing rules and guides say? Does it in any way highlight onboarding as a priority? Does it in any way make onboarding the core of getting people into your community? Or does it even have anything regarding onboarding at all? Once you evaluate this, you'll be able to identify what exactly you're doing wrong, or what you've been doing wrong during your onboarding, or what contributors have been running away from as a result of your onboarding practices. Now, if you're able to identify the project, you can actually adjust your foundation. And how do you do this? There are different ways you can actually start fixing things. First, you have to gain the attention of the existing contributors, and you can do this by driving more engagement through hackathons and other community-based activities, holding meetups and all. Now, once you have this together, you're going to now improve on the existing guidelines, making sure that it exists in our rules on, or our documentations on how to get started, or how to get around a particular project, and then make onboarding a culture. I don't know how many communities have onboarding calls or onboarding meetups, onboarding meetings, but contributing to the Layer 5 community made me actually realize the importance of onboarding calls for newcomers. Most times you will see contributing to chaos as well, because we usually have like one-on-one calls with first-time contributors to our project. Now, this has helped a lot of persons. Now, speaking out of experience, now because we made onboarding a culture in these communities, whenever a newcomer joins the community, we subconsciously feel the need, see the need to send them the necessary resources, tell them, hello, welcome to the community. It's good to have you here. Well, you can actually do this and you can actually do that. But if you want to join us as a community, you can also do this. These are areas you can get into. Now, this singular efforts made either by the moderators in your community or the maintainers and the leaders in your community goes a long way to how the experience of the contributor subsequently would be. And so make onboarding a culture, an unconscious practice for every single person in the community. Now, I know I tried this in a few communities, and subsequently a lot of people started doing the same thing, seeing the need to welcome other persons and hand them with the necessary resources. Both the leaders, the moderators, and even mere contributors saw the need to actually welcome other contributors the same way they were welcomed. And also, you can simplify the getting started process. So how is your getting started? Does your getting started answer the question, what does the community do? Why does this community exist? What are we looking towards achieving? And if it answers all this, does it also answer the questions, where do I go from here as a contributor? What am I looking for in this community as a contributor? If it provides, or if you're getting started, and the getting started could be your handbook. A lot of communities have handbooks that are readily available with a detailed and concise information about that community. Now, it could either be a documentation that says getting started for that particular community. Whichever one you choose to do, it can also be in form of an information, a video recording that actually gives a step-to-step guide on how to navigate that particular community or project. whichever method that you choose as a project leader, try to make it something common among community members. So whenever someone gets in, we're just going to hand them getting started guide so they can read on the at their own convenience, but also you can have one-on-one calls with them to, just put together, make sure that they understood getting started resources that was handed over and they don't have any questions. And also adopt diverse methods of onboarding. And by adopting diverse methods, I mean doing more than just sending out tons of documentation. I know I've gotten into open source communities where the first thing I received was 3 documentations, and this documentation had lots of pages, lots of links and inner links and all. So reading this entire documentation was really overwhelming because I had to go through 3 separate documentations to understand a project. That's, for a new contributor, is really scary, and it's a thing to actually run away from. And so as a community leader, you should adopt other means of onboarding people, and you can do this by hosting one-on-one calls. Like I mentioned earlier, in layer 5, we started the practice of hosting one-on-one calls with our community members, and after a period of time, we noticed that not only did we get more maintainers that are willing to contribute, but also that there are several contributors who are not so experienced, but then they are willing to learn, and we're able to help them in the best ways possible. And so having one-on-one contributors, it doesn't have to be the entire day. It could be just 1 hour a week or a month or 30 minutes at most, just to make sure you put them through on all that the community has to offer and where they come in that particular community. You can also do a recording or a YouTube video, like I said earlier. And if you want to do a documentation, you can also create a detailed documentation, either the handbook or any form of document that is focused on the basics of your community, the intro to your community, hands-on guide to your community. And so it can either be in video, but then anything other than lots of documentations and resources saves a lot of problems. And you can also have a responsive onboarding team. I don't know how many communities have this, but we started with this onboarding team. My first experience with the onboarding team was in Gnome, and it did a lot of good for me because I was able to understand the community, even if I was not an expert at the time, because I was just getting into the project. Even if I was not an expert at the time, I was able to understand what the community is all about, what projects we're working on, and the areas to get involved. And I was able to get involved through that method. And so creating a team that is solely responsible for onboarding, this could be the community managers or the moderators or just the leaders in a particular community that are delegated towards doing this or carrying out this responsibility, is going to go a long way. And then you contribute to the contributions welfare should be another thing that a project owner or a community leader should look out for. I'm going to give a simple example. I joined an open source community lately, and sorry, I'm trying to actually think of the name right now, and I keep forgetting names. So, but if I think of the name, I'll definitely mention it along the way. But yeah, I joined an open source community, and the first message I got was from the founder of the community. The first welcome message. I don't know if that is an automated message, but I got like responses. I was getting responses afterwards, and I don't think that was automated. And so the message was like, hello, it's good to have you here. So our community does this, and you can find these resources in this place. So what are your skills? What do you do? So after I answered all of this and provided necessary information, I do this, and they're like, okay, these are the areas that your skills will be most useful, and you'll be able to learn, make good use of your skills, as well as learn from the community. Now, you see how the owner of the community was able to put me through on understanding the community. That singular experience made me want to refer other persons to join this community and contribute to this community. And then be kind with your review and feedback. Now, no first-time contributor wants to get the harshest or the meanest feedback on their first time contributing. That is a huge turn off for every single person, because not only is your confidence crushed, but your trust in yourself and your experiences is crushed as well. And so when your maintainers are not kind towards giving reviews and feedback, this is going to affect a lot of persons mentally and give them a bad orientation or impression towards that particular project. Now let's go back to the high school instance. Let's say you walked into open source, of course, which is the high school, and the first person that walked up to you was the meanest person in school. And then, of course, meeting with the mean people in school usually is not the best experience. After that particular scenario, your orientation of the entire school is going to be sketchy, because you'll be like, what if this person walks up to me and says the same thing again? What if this person walks up to me and does this? That's exactly how it works when giving out feedback to newcomers or first time contributors to your project. Whatever feedback you give them is either going to make them feel comfortable and welcome in that community, or keep them on their toes and make them sketchy about your community. And now that we've seen how to tackle that, what are the rewards of quality onboarding? There are several benefits that come with improving onboarding practices in your community. Now, it doesn't stop at just being able to retain your contributors. On the long run, it helps with sustainability of open source. Now, because a lot of persons today have bad experiences, and when you ask them, why are you not contributing to open source? They say, the maintainers were rude to me. The communities are not good places. I wasn't welcomed properly. Or I got into the community, I didn't see any issues. You didn't see any issues, or you weren't pointed to where the issues are. Or your first impression made you change the entire idea of open source generally for you. And this is like, so now let's look at the benefits of quality onboarding to contributors and the owners, the project owners, of course. And you're going to see contributor retention first and foremost, because you gave someone the best experience that they wanted or they were looking out for in an open source community. They'll feel the need to, tell somebody else about this community and come back to that community and make good contributions. That is one. You're going to have decreased stress. Now, all of the energy that you would have put into making sure your contributors don't make errors while contributing or go against your contribution guidelines or your code of conduct, all of these fights and the arguments that you could have had as a result of not properly onboarding your contributors will be decreased like completely, because people are now aware. The only reason why a lot of persons will go against the code of conduct is if they're ignorant, of course. And because people are aware of these details, people are aware of what is meant to be done and what should not be done. So you don't have to go by yourself, single-handedly meeting people and approaching them or confronting them based on their performance, all of that, or even delegating tasks. The contributors will consciously be aware that, yes, I'm meant to fix this task if there's a task available. And then you also gain the contributors' trust, because over time, when the contributors see that, yes, not only does this project or community care about me, they also look out for my learning, my skills, how much I'm able to use what I'm learning here to good use and all of that. I know some communities have contributed to chaos on the layer 5 community. They focus so much on making sure not only are you useful to the community, but they're also useful to yourself after contributing to this community. And that alone, that confidence in these communities make you want to just stick around for a longer time. And this increases productivity because the agitation towards a particular project will be increased. And so the willingness to contribute is going to be there. And of course, everyone is going to be engaging, and a healthy community, basically, which will make more contributions to come in and your project to be growing subsequently. And you're going to have dedicated contributors, of course, because they trust your project and they believe that, yes, we believe in the goals of this project, we believe in the founder of this project, and we're going to see it towards the end. And this is because they receive the necessary information that they need from the onset, and so they see the need to actually go through that particular school. Then we have higher engagement and satisfaction. By higher engagement, you see a lot of communities. Like I said, you see communities that have like 2,000 to 20,000 members, but the last message in their Slack or Discord was like a month back. Now, this is because so many persons are busy fixing issues that exist on the website, but then they're scared to come and ask questions in the Slack because no one will answer, or because no one is actually available to answer. All of this is because the contributors were not built or were not aware of this, were not informed that coming to the community, you can actually trust your community for your questions, you can trust your community as your friends, you can also make friends in your community. They weren't like giving that intro to the community, and so they don't try to engage so much. And you see satisfaction, of course. A user, for instance, that tries to use your project but then gets properly onboarded always feels the need to share this project with another person, because they'll be like, I had the best experience. The user experience matters a lot, either for community or for project building, or the UI of your project, whichever one. Your users experience, your contributor experience matters a lot. And if your community members experience the best, they're definitely going to see the need to tell other persons because they're fully satisfied. Then we have diversity in members. Now, because you understand that there is diversity from the contributors, people are coming from different regions of the world, you're going to be addressing each of these persons accordingly. And because they feel welcome in them, regardless of their diversity, they're definitely going to, bring other contributors from these diverse regions. And at the end of the day, you achieve a diverse open source community that you're looking out for. And your community grows, becomes sustainable over time, because not only are you having contributors stay, but then the contributors are willing to actually bring in more contributors. And of course, they're not just coming in to increase the numbers of your community. They're coming in with ideas and thoughts and perspectives to grow that particular community, because the first impression they received from your community was the best, and it's affected their experiences over time. And all of these experiences will not only increase, the idea people have about open source, but also affect the sustainability of open source projects. So many persons out there have their stories on why they're not contributing to open source. But if only we can work towards changing the impression, it's going to go a long way. Now let's look at this chart, for instance. Now this, if you look on the left, you're going to see the charts going in a negative way. But you see the project having so many stars and commits. And like I said, most communities, you will see that their GitHub repositories have like 2,000 to 10,000 stars. But when you come to the community, there's very little or no engagement. And this is because people are comfortable that the project has potentials. They're going to bring in contributions or creating issues. But when it comes to actually engaging with the community behind this project, there's very little or no effort made towards that. And then on the right, you're going to see that the graph goes to the right direction, and there are more contributors, there are more people actually recognizing and adopting this project. People are referring this community because of the experiences they've had. You're having more commits, and the stars, of course, the stars of the project are also rising and appreciating, and all of these are just to show you that the experiences of people, when they're not properly welcome, goes a long way to affect not only the project, but the entire community at large. And I'm saying this from experience, because when we implemented the onboarding calls in the layer 5 community, we not only noticed that a lot of persons were willing to stay back and contribute, but we're also able to build more leaders that will actually continue with these onboarding practices. So many persons now are willing to say, yes, I also welcome other persons, just like I was welcome to the community. And so does the circle go. It's an endless circle of contributors willing to, and like I said, any whatever information you give to your contributors on the first day or the first time getting into your community is the same information that is passed down to other communities. And so if the contributors receive the worst impression from your team, you most likely pass that same impression to subsequent contributors that walk up to that particular person and ask questions about your community. And we don't want all of that. So prioritize onboarding today for your community. And as an open source community, getting your contributors the best onboarding experience is the number one step towards sustaining your open source community, because most contributors, the old contributors, will likely have like other activities and might not readily be available. And in this situation where you didn't onboard new contributors properly, you're going to be looking out for more maintainers now, and then start searching for more persons to engage in your project. And generally, not onboarding your contributors properly affects the project's performance on a long run. So thank you so much for your time. That is all I have today. And then you can connect with me on Twitter at Anita_Ihuman or AnitaCharles@gmail.com. Yeah, thank you. That's all.